In a quiet afternoon, an elderly widow sat alone by the window, staring at an old photograph of her late husband. Her hands shook as she traced his face, memories flooding back like waves she could never escape. Neighbors passed by without noticing, unaware of the years of grief she had silently endured. But today, something extraordinary was about to happen, something that would restore her faith in the goodness of the world. And the justice she had long prayed for was closer than she ever imagined. Her name was Mrs. Amina, a kind-hearted woman in her early 70s. She had spent most of her life caring for her family, always putting others first, and never asking for anything in return. After her husband passed unexpectedly, she continued to live in the same modest home, surrounded by memories of a life she once shared. Every morning, she would walk to the small neighborhood market, carrying a cloth bag filled with vegetables and bread. Despite her modest means, she always offered a smile, a few coins, or a kind word to anyone she met. One day, while waiting for the market to open, a young shopkeeper named Sarah noticed her sitting quietly on the bench outside. "Good morning, Mrs. Amina," Sarah said softly. "Would you like some tea while you wait?" Amina's lips curved into a gentle smile. "Thank you, dear. That would be lovely." Sarah watched her carefully. There was a dignity in her presence, but also a quiet sadness. She had a feeling there was more to Mrs. Amina's story than anyone knew. Years ago, Mrs. Amina's life was full of joy. She and her husband ran a small tailor shop. Together, their love for each other evident in every stitch and seam. They had dreams of expanding the business, of sending their children to school, of traveling. Simple dreams that seemed so close yet always just out of reach. Then tragedy struck. Her husband fell ill unexpectedly, leaving her to manage the shop alone. The community she had helped for decades seemed to vanish. Bills piled up, debts grew, and the landlord demanded rent that she could barely afford. To make matters worse, a group of unscrupulous businessmen took advantage of her vulnerability. They pressured her to sell the shop and her home at an unfair price. "I can't. This is my husband's life's work," she said one evening, tears streaming down her face. "You don't have a choice," they replied coldly. "We can make your life even harder if you resist." Unable to fight back alone, she reluctantly signed the papers, and her home and shop were taken from her. She moved into a small rented room on the outskirts of town, carrying nothing but memories and a quiet hope that justice would one day prevail. Years passed. Mrs. Amina lived quietly, never speaking of her loss to anyone except Sarah, who had become a trusted friend. One rainy afternoon, as she returned from the market, she noticed a notice posted outside the old shop. The handwriting seemed familiar. It was the handwriting of a lawyer she had once trusted but lost contact with years ago. Sarah ran to her side. "Mrs. Amina, what is it?" she asked. With trembling hands, Amina read aloud, "Notice, investigation into illegal acquisition of property. Rightful owner to reclaim shop and residence." Tears welled up in her eyes. "Could it be?" she whispered. That evening, a lawyer named Mr. Hamid, who had been secretly investigating the fraudulent sale for years, came to meet her. "Mrs. Amina," he said gently, "we have discovered evidence that the sale of your property was illegal. You are entitled to full ownership again." The news was overwhelming. Mrs. Amina sat in silence, letting the words sink in. Years of suffering, patience, and quiet endurance had finally led to justice. In the following weeks, the legal process was completed, and Mrs. Amina's home and shop were restored. But she did not seek revenge against those who had wronged her. Instead, she wanted to continue the life she had once lived, helping the community she cherished so deeply. Sarah, inspired by her strength, helped her reopen the shop. Word of Mrs. Amina's story spread throughout the town, inspiring neighbors and strangers alike. People began visiting, offering assistance, and sharing small acts of kindness, everything from donating supplies to volunteering their time. One day, as she arranged the newly repaired shop, Mrs. Amina looked out at the bustling street and smiled. "Life may take from you what you love," she said softly to Sarah. "But faith, patience, and kindness, they always return in ways you cannot imagine." The shop became more than just a place of business. It was a symbol of resilience, hope, and divine justice. Neighbors who had once ignored her now stopped to share a word, a smile, or a helping hand. And every morning she continued her quiet ritual, walking to the market, offering small gestures of kindness, and cherishing the life she had fought so hard to reclaim. Mrs. Amina's story reminds us that even in the darkest times, hope and justice can find their way. Her patience, faith, and unwavering kindness turned years of sorrow into a life of meaning and purpose. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change someone's world. Or as she often says with a gentle smile, share this story if it touched your heart.